Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for your host this evening, Ash Hewson.
Well. Thanks, James. I think I've always wanted a welcome like that. That's great. Thanks, James. Well, what a state this place was in last week, huh? It's actually unbelievable, I think, that we've managed to kind of get it ready for tonight. And of course, it hasn't just been the last week we've been working on this, it's actually been the last few months, so I thought it would be good, as this is our first event, that I actually say a few words of thanks. And the first person that I want to thank is Neil. Our creative director. Look at the state of that. Come architect for this project. He's designed pretty much all of this. And I think you can agree he's done an absolutely amazing job of the space. The next person I want to thank is Steve. So Steve's been on the case pretty much day in, day out, staying on top of all the kind of the contractors and all the work that's kind of been going on here. And again, we couldn't have really done it without him. And talking to contractors, I mean, I could stay here for the next 10 minutes listing all the contractors, all the really important people that have been involved in this. But we've got a football match to watch, right? So I'm not going to do that. But there is one person in particular that I do want to call out, and that's Martin from Storage Concepts. Where is he? The guy's been a total legend. He's really treated this as a real labour of love, and we definitely couldn't have done it without you, Martin, so thanks, mate. Actually, there's one more person I should thank, and that's Gary. So when we first started this thing, he came up with a spreadsheet, right, with like budget numbers in, and we've managed to successfully make every single one of them red. I mean, for example, this telly on his spreadsheet was supposed to be a 65-inch screen. So, you know, that's what that would have looked like. So, you know, this is my 20th year being at Serif. I'm not really too sure what I think about that, but it is my 20th year. And I guess being in a space like this and doing something like this kind of makes you realise how far we've come. And of course, that's really been all down to Affinity. And this was really the brainchild of a few of our developers, Tony, Andy, Matt, and we owe them so much, you know, because it's just been so successful. We've won all kinds of awards, plaudits. We've won App of the Year twice, an Apple Design Award, a Windows Development Award, a Press Association Award. We've had loads and loads of positive reviews and press, as well as, of course, fantastic customer reviews. You know, we've had over 10,000 five-star customer reviews now, which is just fantastic. And of course, the way that people are adopting it, the growth that we're seeing all around the world, more and more customers are adopting it every day. And it's almost unbelievable to me that just recently we've hit 1 million Affinity users worldwide. Okay, so the reason why we're here, I've kind of got a couple of things that I think we should maybe talk about. And the first one is Affinity Publisher. Was that dramatic enough for you? Affinity Publisher has to be one of the most hotly anticipated apps that certainly we've ever done, but probably actually in the creative world, I'd like to say. And with good reason too, you know, we've worked really, really hard on this, and it's got already a ton of fantastic features. It's got support for massive documents with lightning speed, smart photo frames, live master pages, smart dynamic page objects, all kinds of really advanced typography controls, linked text frames and drop caps and all those types of things that a pro-end desktop publishing package needs. Of course, it's got end-to-end CMYK, press-ready output, all of these types of things. But perhaps the biggest thing with Publisher is that what we're actually going to do is have the tightest integration between a suite of applications that the world has ever seen. And it's going to be something really, really special. Now, we're actually now very, very close to launching Affinity Publisher. And in fact, I'm pleased to say that we will definitely be in a free public beta by the end of August. And we're now actually inviting people to sign up on our webpage. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is iPad. Now, 12 months ago, it kind of feels like we totally changed the game with creative software on iPad. We launched Affinity Photo, and it was the very first high-end, truly professional photo editing app that's ever been launched on iPad. And of course, it was fantastic for us. I mean, actually, we kind of had the amazing opportunity to go on stage at WWDC to present it. I don't like talking about it much, but I'll mention it again. Yeah, I mean, in case you're wondering, that's a guy who's absolutely crapping himself at the moment. Yeah, so we had the opportunity to go and do that at WWDC. So as I say, 12 months ago, I think we really changed the game for creative software. But now, today, we're going to raise the bar again. Pretty cool, huh? So that's our latest promo video for Affinity Designer for iPad. Actually, the guys from Affixers Films who put this together for us are with us tonight. So give them a round of applause. I think they've done a fantastic job. All right, okay, so now's the time of the night when you can laugh at a guy who can't draw for toffee. Try to give you a demo of a graphic design application. So let me just switch to the iPad here. So I'm going to show you a few things. I'll just launch Affinity Designer, and I'll open one of these designs. Now, one of the first things that you'll notice with Affinity Designer, like all of our other apps, frankly, is the speed of it. So when you kind of pan and zoom around, for example, it is lightning fast. Everything you see is kind of totally in real time all the time. And in fact, this is a really complicated document. In fact, I can show you that. If I switch into outline view, I mean, this is a pretty cool feature in itself. You can see all the kind of the curves and the objects that's actually involved in this. It's actually got thousands of layers, this document, and you can still work in it super fast in real time. Now, I am going to try and draw something now. As you can see, he's got a tooth missing. So I'm going to try and fill that in. And it is obviously primarily a vector application. So one of the go-to tools with any vector app is, of course, the pen tool. So we've spent a lot of time on this, and here, as you can see, you can kind of drag out your Bezier curves. I've got shortcuts to convert things into a cusp. So I'll just start with a very rough shape. Now, of course, at the moment, this has kind of got a white stroke around it. I don't want that, but with a simple gesture, I can just remove the stroke. And in fact, what I want to do is fill this shape with a colour. I'll choose a colour of the other tooth. And of course, one of the fantastic things with vector generally is that it's something that you can do totally non-destructively. So if I'm not happy with the shape I've created, I can flick into the node tool. I can kind of drag the sort of the shape around. Again, I'm seeing everything in kind of real time. We've even got a really cool corner tool. So I don't want a really sharp point on that. I kind of want to make it rounded, if I can just drag that. So as you can see, I've kind of got this real-time corner tool to make points round. Now, at the moment, this is a solid shape, but actually what I want to do is apply a gradient to that. And again, this is something that's really smooth and quick. All I need to do is drag my gradient on. I can drag it into the position that I want. And if I want, actually, I can change the color of one of those points to make it white. I can even add additional points on that very easily. So you can add gradients to things dead easy. Now, all of these things are quite traditional tools for a vector app. But of course, with iPad, we've also got Apple Pencil. And that gives us some other opportunities. And we've sort of worked really hard on people being able to draw super smooth lines. So let's say on this eyebrow here, I want to add some additional hairs. I can pick up my pencil tool, and with brush stabilization, I can just, actually I need to add a stroke on that. Actually, when I'm here, I'll quickly show you, I've just drawn that sort of line, and under your stroke tab, you can, again, you see everything live in real time, obviously adjust the thickness of it. I can actually also adjust the pressure of it to make that line sort of tapered at the end, for example. But now I've done that, I can actually add some more strokes to this, and you can see I can add really smooth vector strokes. So this is a whole new sort of way to be able to draw vector designs using Apple Pencil. Right, I'll move on. I'll show you something else. Here I've kind of got like a logo that I'm working on. Harry's Smoothies. Now, one of the really things that's very important with any kind of vector design is layer control. So let's say I was to add a new shape onto this. I'll actually draw a circle. Here, you can see that that circle's been added to the top of my layer stack. Now, if I wanted to move the position of that, I can drag it, of course, so I can say position it under my logo, of course, as you'd expect. But we've also added other kind of drop zones to our layer stack. So in fact, I can drag this up now and drop it here. And as you can see, that's now behaving effectively as a mask on the logo. And I can do that instantly. Alternatively, if I wanted to draw this circle inside of anything, I can too. And that just means I need to drag my circle, put it in this drop zone here. And now you can see actually that that circle's just drawing inside of that text there. Now, this is normally quite complicated processes that you have to kind of go through, but with gestures and drop zones that we've done, we've made that dead easy, even on a portable device like iPad. Now, I'll show you something else. Quite often with something like branding, and certainly with things like UI design, you'd often have repeated instances of the same object across a document. And the way that we deal with that is with symbols. So what I can do here is actually create a symbol from that. And now, actually, we've also got another gesture to create additional copies of things. So I'm going to create a copy of that on that can. And again, with 2 fingers down. You can also see I've got snapping here to give me alignment to where I want it to be. So I can create additional copies of this. Now, once I've done that, the great thing with symbols, let me just zoom in here a bit, is that now if I just edit one instance of this, it instantly updates on the rest of them. So let's say I grab this text and say rotate it round. You can see it updates on all the rest of the objects. Of course, things like color as well, I can change, say, with the fill of that text, and it updates on every single one. And you can have hundreds and hundreds of these symbols, and they all update live on your page. One other thing to show you, I think, here is that with stuff like logos and certainly things like icons and stuff that you might do for web graphics, one thing that's always very important is to see how things are going to export. Now, at the moment, this is obviously vector, so all you see is really smooth curves and lines. But what you might want to see is how it looks when you actually export it as, say, a JPEG or a PNG. And in fact, here, if I just go into split screen, you can see that we can get an instant view of how it's going to look when it's exported and how it looks in vector. And this is even the case when we actually go and edit something. Let's say I kind of zoom in a bit here and grab this curve. As I kind of move this curve, let me just move over a little bit. As I move this curve around here, you can see as I'm moving it, I'm seeing exactly how each pixel is going to be contributed to when I export. So it means you can actually get really true pixel perfect designs. Now let me just go back to Zoom to Fit. One other thing to say as well is that all the steps that you actually do in Affinity Designer are all recorded in your history. And we've got this history tab here. And you can see that at the bottom we've got this slider. And here I can literally slide back through, kind of back in time, all of those steps that I've gone through, all the way back again. And it's totally instant. So we've got totally instant undo history. And the final thing, actually, is that when you've finished a design like this, you might want to export it. And here I can go to export. And you can see I've got all of these different options to export. Standard file formats like PNG, JPEG, GIF. You can do a layered PSD, PDF. I can even choose here, for example, a press-ready PDF X4 with print marks, with bleed. And now if I actually wanted to send that off, say, to my client or to my print partner, because of iOS 11, we can do that just with drag and drop. I can just drag that. I can open up my mail, start a new message, and drop it in. And that is a press-ready PDF ready to send to my client. It's as quick as that. Now, something else to say is that one of the things that's totally unique with us is that while this is our iPad app, it has full compatibility with our desktop app too. Now, this actually was something that was created by Romain Tristam about a year ago, and he did this on the desktop version of Affinity Designer. I don't have to worry about converting it or anything like that. I can open it straight away on iPad, and you can see here, if I was to open this up, you can see all of the layers and the objects and everything. All of these were actually created on the desktop version, but I can open and edit them all on iPad. And in fact, I can even now save on iPad and then open it back on Mac. So you can work seamlessly between iPad and Mac. But it does actually get a little bit better than that. We've also got true file compatibility between Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer. So here, for example, if I go back to my welcome screen, I can actually drag this design that was created in Affinity Designer, go into Affinity Photo now, and open it. And now I'm actually in Affinity Photo. I've got all of the layers available to me that were in Affinity Designer. So for example, now I can actually add, say, a filter effect that's only available in Affinity Photo. In fact, this time I might add a sphere, for example. And if I go to my layers, I can open this up and I'll make that a bit bigger, a bit more intense. As you can see, this is live again. I can move this sphere around, that's kind of distorting my design. But because we've got non-destructive live filters in Affinity Photo, I've still got all of the vector data under it. In fact, I can pick up any of these objects. Like, for example, I can pick up this car and actually then move this around. Oh, if I go back. Oh, it's going so well. I could pick up this car and move it. And you can see even as I move it, it's actually being distorted by that sphere filter effect that I've actually applied above it. So we've got non-destructive filter effects in Affinity Photo, but the main point is that we've got full compatibility, and just with drag and drop, you can switch between Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer on the same work. A couple more things to show you. One of the really unique things that Affinity Designer has in the desktop version, as well as the iPad version, is the ability to switch instantly between Vector and Raster. And we've got what we call personas here. And at the moment at the top, I'm in my Vector persona, so I've got all my Vector tools. But if I wanted to, I can just switch to my raster persona, and now it opens up all of my raster tools. So that means, for example, I could go and pick up a raster paintbrush here. I could choose, say, a grunge effect, and then just paint on this design. So I've not had to switch to any other app. So now I'm actually using a raster paintbrush, but I'm painting on this vector document. Now, at the moment, as you can see, that's kind of going outside the edges. So if I undo that, we can also, let's say I was actually select this vector shape first, then when I start painting, my painting is actually encapsulated within that vector shape, so I can't go outside it. In fact, if I was to zoom in here, you can see a perfect example. I've got this clean vector line, and I've got my raster data as well, and it's as simple as that. And I suppose the final thing to say is that just because you're working on iPad, that does not mean that in any way that you compromise on power or indeed the size of document that you could work on. So here I've got this other document, and you might be able to see in the distance that there's something else there. So let me sort of zoom in to that a little bit, and you can see that there's another character there. But in fact, I can maybe zoom in a little bit more, and there's this little cat thing. Oh, but actually, I'll zoom in maybe just a little bit more. And there's another thing on there. And this, at the moment, we're actually zoomed in by 22 million%. In fact, if I was to print this document and this character here come out of the size that I'm seeing on the iPad, the document is currently 600 miles wide. So that kind of gives you an idea of the sort of document you can work on. Right, well, that kind of concludes my demo. Let me go back to this. One thing that I did really want to say is that, without a doubt, Affinity Design has been one of the most ambitious projects that we've ever done. And to actually kind of get an iPad app working with the right workflow and the right gestures and the right sort of tools and the way of working that the professionals wanted, we actually enlisted the help of some professional designers. And we've basically been running this kind of beta with these designers, and we've been sort of talking to them, taking advice, understanding some of the workflows. That's yours, Bob. And you can see the sort of artwork that they're creating. And all of these things have been created from scratch, end to end, on iPad, which I think is really, really incredible. Now, actually, one artist that unfortunately can't be here today was Steve Simpson. And we actually caught up with him to tell us a little bit about how he found the beta process.
My name is Steve Simpson. I'm an illustrator and graphic designer. My background is very mixed. I studied technical illustration. These days, I'm very much based in the sort of graphic design side of things. Most of my work is either branding or packaging, but I also do children's toys. My toolkits got very small. I think back 20 years ago, just how many things I needed to be able to create the things I was doing. It's really nice that you can actually go and sit in a cafe and work, or because I travel a bit, sit on a plane. Having tried out Designer, surprisingly, it was very easy to pick up. It is intuitive. The fact you can go from pixel to vector in Designer is really interesting. So once I've worked up all these shapes, which are fully editable, then I can move back into the pixel persona and start adding texture, but still be able to go back to the vector persona and adapt and change things and move things around. So that's a really nice way of working. It gives me a more freedom than I'm used to. So that's going to be really, really helpful, especially when clients are coming back with changes and you can actually physically move these things around without affecting the actual pixels too much. That's been eye-opening, yeah. That's been a really nice way to work. It's been a really good experience.
So that's pretty cool. I have to say, actually, that it's just been phenomenal for us to work with all these really talented artists. I have to say talented artists, because actually we've got quite a lot of them in the room tonight. So please give them all a round of applause for us. So as you can imagine, you know, after all of this work and sweat and tears that's kind of got into this app, I'm absolutely thrilled to say that Affinity Designer is finally available on the App Store right now. So actually that concludes this part of tonight's program. I guess I've just kind of got one other announcement to make. And of course, that very simply is the fact that football is coming home, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening!